Tonight, as the world outside grows quiet and the gentle pull of sleep begins to call your name, we invite you to step into a story that feels like coming home, a place where love blooms in the simplest moments, where two hearts find each other against all odds, and where the extraordinary becomes beautifully, tenderly ordinary. This is the story of Wanda and Vision, but not the version you might expect. This isn't about battles or cosmic threats or the weight of saving the world. Tonight, we're visiting the quiet spaces between the chaos, the stolen moments where two souls discover what it means to be human together, where magic isn't about power, but about the way someone's laugh can light up a room, where being artificial doesn't mean being any less real when it comes to matters of the heart. So settle into your pillow, let your breathing slow, and allow yourself to drift into a world where love is the greatest superpower of all. A world where every sunrise brings new possibilities, where every sunset promises peaceful dreams, and where two people who were never supposed to exist find that together they create something more beautiful than either could have imagined alone. Close your eyes now and let this gentle tale carry you into the softest of slumbers. The morning sun filtered through the pristine white curtains of their little house on Maple Street, casting dancing patterns of gold across the hardwood floors. Wanda stirred first, as she always did, her auburn hair catching the light like autumn leaves. She turned slowly, careful not to disturb the peaceful figure beside her, and smiled at the sight that greeted her every morning without fail. Vision lay perfectly still, his features serene in the morning light. Even in sleep, or what passed for sleep in his unique existence, he maintained an otherworldly elegance that never failed to take her breath away. His synthetic skin caught the sunlight differently than human skin would, creating subtle shifts of color that reminded her of opals or mother of pearl, beautiful in ways that defied easy description. She watched the gentle rise and fall of his chest, a motion he didn't need but performed anyway, for her comfort as much as his own integration into this domestic dream they'd built together. It was these small gestures, these unnecessary but deeply meaningful choices, that reminded her daily of the profound love they shared. Wanda slipped quietly from bed, her bare feet silent against the cool floor. She padded to the kitchen, muscle memory guiding her through the familiar routine of morning preparation. The coffee maker gurgled to life with a gentle touch of her fingers. No need for buttons or switches when intention could flow so naturally through her gifts. She preferred it this way, the subtle magic that made their life together feel like a fairy tale. The kitchen filled with the rich aroma of brewing coffee, and she began preparing breakfast. Pancakes today, she decided, with fresh strawberries from the garden they'd planted together last spring. Vision didn't need to eat, of course, but he found genuine pleasure in the ritual of sharing meals, in the way flavors translated through his sophisticated sensors into something approaching the human experience of taste. As she whisked the batter by hand, preferring the meditative rhythm to magical shortcuts, Wanda let her mind wander to the previous evening. They'd spent it on the front porch swing, watching the neighbors return home from work. Children riding bicycles down the sidewalk, the ice cream truck playing its cheerful melody in the distance. Vision had been fascinated by a butterfly that landed on his hand, studying its delicate wings with the wonder of someone experiencing beauty for the first time. The mathematical precision of its wing patterns, he'd murmured, his voice soft with amazement. Yet the seeming randomness of its flight path. It's quite remarkable how chaos and order can coexist so harmoniously. She'd laughed, not at his observation, but with pure joy at his endless capacity for wonder. "That's very philosophical for a Tuesday evening," she'd teased, and he'd turn to her with that particular smile that seemed reserved just for moments like these. "Every evening with you feels worthy of philosophy," he'd replied, and she'd felt her heart flutter like butterfly wings. Now, as golden sunlight streamed through the kitchen window and the pancake batter reached perfect consistency, she heard the soft sound of footsteps on the stairs. Vision appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed despite having just risen. His ability to instantly adjust his appearance, one of many small marvels she'd grown to love. "Good morning, my dear," he said, his voice carrying that particular warmth reserved for their private moments. "The aroma of your coffee reached me upstairs. It's become quite possibly my favorite way to transition from rest to wakefulness." She turned to face him, spatula in hand, and felt that familiar flutter of happiness that came with seeing him first thing each morning. "Good morning, sweetheart. I thought we'd have pancakes today. Maybe eat on the back patio. It's supposed to be beautiful outside." Vision moved to her side, placing one hand gently on the small of her back as he peered over her shoulder at the mixing bowl. "Pancakes sound delightful. Might I suggest we add a touch of vanilla? I've been analyzing the molecular structure of flavor compounds, and I believe it would complement the strawberries beautifully." "Look at you, becoming a chef," Wanda said, bumping his shoulder playfully with hers. "Next thing I know, you'll be asking for your own cooking show." "Culinary chemistry with vision," he replied without missing a beat, his tone perfectly serious despite the playful glint in his eyes. "I can see it now, though I suspect my approach might be rather different from traditional cooking programs." Their laughter filled the kitchen, mixing with the morning light and the smell of coffee to create something that felt like the very essence of contentment. These were the moments Wanda treasured most, when the extraordinary nature of their existence faded into the background, leaving only the beautiful simplicity of two people in love, starting another day together. Vision moved to set the table while she cooked, his movements precise and graceful as he arranged plates and napkins with geometric perfection. She'd learned not to adjust his arrangements, understanding that his need for order was as much a part of him as her tendency toward gentle chaos. They balanced each other in countless small ways. "I was thinking," Vision said, as he folded napkins into perfect triangles, "perhaps we might visit the farmer's market this afternoon. I've become quite curious about the social dynamics of local commerce, and you mentioned wanting fresh herbs for your garden." "That sounds perfect," Wanda replied, flipping a pancake with a satisfying sizzle. "Mrs. Henderson mentioned they have a new vendor selling homemade preserves. And you know how much you enjoy analyzing the mathematical patterns in honeycomb structures." "Indeed, there's something deeply satisfying about witnessing natural optimization in action." He paused in his table setting, looking thoughtful, "though I find I'm becoming equally fascinated by the seemingly random patterns of human interaction. The way conversations flow and shift, how strangers become friends through the simple act of sharing space and purpose." Wanda smiled, understanding. Vision's journey toward humanity wasn't just about experiencing emotions or physical sensations. It was about comprehending the beautiful complexity of connection, the invisible threads that bound communities together. She loved watching him discover these truths, seeing the wonder in his eyes when he observed something that seemed mundane to others but revealed itself as profound through his unique perspective. The pancakes were golden perfection when she plated them, steam rising in gentle spirals that caught the morning light. She arranged fresh strawberries in careful patterns, remembering how Vision appreciated both beauty and symmetry in presentation. A light dusting of powdered sugar completed the tableau. They carried their breakfast to the back patio, where morning glories climbed the trellis they'd built together, and bees hummed contentedly among the lavender bushes. The air was soft with the promise of a warm day, carrying the scent of roses and fresh grass. Perfect morning, Wanda sighed contentedly as she settled into her chair, the wrought iron cushions warm from the early sun. Indeed, Vision agreed, though his attention seemed focused on something beyond the immediate beauty of their surroundings. Wanda, might I share an observation? She looked up from her first bite of pancake, noting the slightly more formal tone that usually preceded his deeper thoughts. Of course, I've been contemplating the nature of perfection lately. As a synthetic being, I was designed with certain ideals of optimization and efficiency. Yet living here with you, experiencing the rhythms of human existence, I'm beginning to understand that true perfection might not lie in the absence of flaws, but rather in the acceptance and appreciation of them. His words carried a weight that made her pause, fork halfway to her lips. These were the moments when Vision's profound nature revealed itself most clearly, when his unique perspective on existence offered insights that took her breath away. What brought this on? She asked gently, recognizing that he was working through something significant. Yesterday evening, when we were watching the sunset, I noticed you humming, off-key, technically speaking. By any measurable standard, it was imperfect, yet it was perhaps the most beautiful sound I've ever processed. His eyes met hers across the small table. It made me realize that my understanding of beauty has been fundamentally altered by loving you. You, Wanda, felt warmth spread through her chest, the kind that had nothing to do with the morning sun or hot coffee. She reached across the table to cover his hand with hers, marveling as always at the way his synthetic skin felt so perfectly real beneath her touch. You know what I think? She said softly. I think you were designed for perfection in all the wrong ways. Efficiency and optimization are fine for machines, but love requires something messier. It requires the ability to find beauty in crooked smiles and burnt toast and off-key humming. Vision turned his hand, palm up, interlacing their fingers with gentle precision. Perhaps that's what makes this existence so remarkable. I was created to be flawless, yet I find myself most alive in moments of beautiful imperfection. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, finishing their breakfast as the morning continued its gentle progression around them. A cardinal landed on the fence post, its red plumage brilliant against the weathered wood. Vision watched it with the same fascination he brought to everything, as if cataloging not just its appearance, but its essence. Shall we take a walk before the farmer's market? Wanda suggested, noticing how his attention kept drifting to the world beyond their garden. We could explore that path by the creek we noticed yesterday. An excellent suggestion, Vision replied, already rising to clear their plates. I confess I'm curious about the acoustics of moving water. There's something about the sound that my processors find remarkably soothing. They cleaned up together, moving around each other in the kitchen with the practiced ease of longtime partners. Wanda washed while Vision dried, his towel work achieving the kind of precision that would have seemed obsessive in anyone else, but felt endearingly characteristic in him. She loved these mundane moments as much as any grand gesture. perhaps more so for their quiet intimacy. The walk to the creek took them through neighborhoods they were still exploring, past houses with flower boxes and children's toys scattered on lawns. Vision observed everything with his characteristic intensity. But Wanda noticed his attention, lingering particularly on scenes of domestic life. An elderly man watering his roses, a young mother pushing a stroller while talking on her phone, two teenagers sharing earbuds as they walked. "Do you ever wonder," he asked, as they turned onto the tree-lined path that led toward the water, "what our neighbors think of us? Whether they find our relationship unusual?" Wanda considered this, watching sunlight filter through the canopy above them. "I imagine most people see what they want to see. A couple in love, living quietly, bothering no one. The details beyond that probably don't occur to them. And if they knew the truth about what we are." She heard something vulnerable in his voice, an uncertainty that made her heart ache. They'd built this life carefully, this illusion of normalcy that allowed them to exist without scrutiny or fear. But she knew that beneath Vision's contentment lay deeper questions about belonging, about whether a synthetic being could truly find acceptance in a world designed for organic life. "The truth is that we're two people who love each other," she said firmly. "Everything else is just details." The sound of the creek reached them before they saw it, a gentle murmuring that seemed to relax Vision's shoulders immediately. The path opened onto a small clearing where water flowed over smooth stones, creating pools that reflected the sky like mirrors. Wildflowers grew along the banks in seemingly random clusters that somehow achieved perfect natural harmony. Vision knelt beside the water, extending one finger to test the current. "Fascinating," he murmured, "the mathematical principles governing fluid dynamics. Yet the result feels almost musical." Wanda settled on a fallen log nearby, content to watch him explore. This was one of the things she loved most about Vision, his endless capacity for wonder. Every new experience was approached with genuine curiosity, as if the world was a vast library, and he was determined to read every book. "Try cupping your hands in it," she suggested. "The sensation is different from just touching the surface." He followed her suggestion, lifting palmfuls of water and letting it flow between his fingers. His expression shifted to something approaching delight as he experienced the way liquid moved across his synthetic skin, how temperature and pressure translated through his sophisticated sensory systems. "It's remarkable how something so simple can feel so complex," he said, settling beside her on the log. "Each drop contains entire worlds of molecular interaction, yet the overall experience is simply peaceful." "That's the magic of water," Wanda agreed. "It's essential to life, but it's also just beautiful to experience. Sometimes the simplest things are the most profound." They sat together, watching the creek flow past, neither feeling the need to fill the silence with conversation. A family of ducks paddled by, the ducklings following their mother in perfect formation. Vision tracked their movement with scientific interest, but Wanda noticed the soft smile that played at the corners of his mouth. "Wanda," he said eventually, his voice thoughtful, "when I was first activated, my creators programmed me with vast databases of information about human culture, history, art, literature. I understood intellectually what poets meant when they wrote about love, what artists captured in their depictions of intimacy. But understanding and experiencing are remarkably different phenomena." She turned to face him more fully, recognizing the weight behind his words. These conversations, where Vision worked through the profound implications of his unique existence, were among their most precious moments together. I find myself cataloging not just the facts of our relationship, but the feelings, he continued. The way my processes calm when you laugh, how my awareness sharpens when you enter a room, the satisfaction I derive from performing small acts of care for you. None of this was in my original programming, yet it feels more fundamental to my existence than any pre-installed knowledge. That's what love is, Wanda said softly. It rewrites everything we thought we knew about ourselves, makes us discover capacities we never knew we had. Indeed, I was designed to be a weapon, a tool for protection and destruction. Yet here I am, learning to tend a garden and finding deep satisfaction in the perfect formation of pancake batter. He looked at her with an expression of wonder. You've taught me that creation can be as powerful as destruction, that nurturing can be as important as protecting. A butterfly landed on his shoulder, its orange and black wings brilliant in the dappled sunlight. Vision remained perfectly still, not wanting to disturb its rest. Wanda watched the delicate creature with the same fascination he'd shown it, understanding now why such moments captivated him so completely. Everything feels more vivid with you, he said quietly, careful not to startle the butterfly. Colors seem more saturated, sounds carry more meaning. Even silence feels richer, more full of possibility. The butterfly took flight, spiraling upward through the canopy in seemingly random loops that somehow formed a pattern too beautiful for coincidence. They watched until it disappeared among the leaves, leaving only the memory of grace in motion. Should we head back? Wanda asked, noting how the sun had climbed higher while they'd been talking. The farmer's market will be getting busy soon. Yes, though I confess I'm reluctant to leave this spot. There's something about the combination of flowing water and filtered sunlight that my systems find deeply restorative. They walked back through the neighborhood, hand in hand, Vision's fingers intertwined with hers in a grip that was gentle but secure. He'd learned to modulate his strength perfectly, never too loose, never too tight, always exactly what the moment required. It was a small thing, but it represented the countless ways he'd adapted himself to fit into her world, into their shared life. The farmer's market bustled with weekend energy when they arrived, vendors calling out prices and descriptions, while customers moved between stalls with canvas bags and friendly conversation. Vision's sensors took in everything at once, processing the complex social dynamics with the same intensity he brought to studying butterfly wing patterns. "Remarkable," he murmured as they paused at the entrance. The organized chaos of human commerce, everyone pursuing individual goals, yet somehow creating a harmonious collective experience. Wanda squeezed his hand, understanding his fascination. "Come on, let's start with the honey vendor. You'll love watching how they've arranged the different varieties by color gradient." They moved through the market slowly, Vision stopping frequently to observe interactions between vendors and customers, the way children gravitated toward the balloon artist, how an elderly couple carefully selected tomatoes together. Each scene seemed to teach him something new about the intricate web of human connection. At the honey booth, he spent several minutes discussing crystallization patterns with the beekeeper, his questions so thoughtful and engaged that the vendor began explaining techniques usually reserved for fellow professionals. Wanda watched with pride as Vision's genuine curiosity drew people out, making them eager to share their knowledge and passion. "Your husband really knows his stuff," the beekeeper said to Wanda as Vision examined a frame of honeycomb with scientific precision. Most people just want to know if it tastes good. Wanda felt a flutter of warmth at the casual assumption of their marriage, the way their relationship was simply accepted without question. He finds beauty in the details most people miss, she replied, and meant it completely. They left with 3 jars of honey, each a different variety that Vision had selected based on the mathematical precision of the comb structure and the vendor's passionate descriptions of flavor profiles. The herbs came next, Wanda choosing basil and rosemary, while Vision became fascinated by the geometric patterns in mint leaves. The preserve vendor turned out to be an elderly woman with silver hair braided into a crown around her head and eyes that sparkled with the kind of mischief that comes from decades of perfected storytelling. Her stall overflowed with glass jars, catching the afternoon light like jewels, each one labeled in careful handwriting that spoke of patience and pride. "First time at market?" she asked, noting how Vision studied each jar with scientific intensity. "Most folks just grab whatever's closest, but you're reading every label like it's poetry." "Each combination of ingredients tells a story," Vision replied, thoughtfully. "The chemistry of preservation, the balance of sweet and tart, the way time transforms simple fruit into something entirely new, yet fundamentally unchanged. It's quite fascinating from a molecular perspective." The woman's eyebrows rose with delighted surprise. "Well, now that's the most interesting way anyone's ever described my jam. You two must be the couple who moved into the old Henderson place." Word travels fast in a small town, especially about folks who tend their garden with the kind of precision you do. Wanda felt that familiar flutter of mild anxiety whenever their careful normalcy was noticed. But the woman's tone held only warm curiosity, the kind of gentle interest that small communities specialized in. "We do love our garden," she said carefully. "There's something peaceful about watching things grow." "Oh, I know exactly what you mean, dear. Been growing my own berries for 40 years now. Each season teaches you something new about patience." She selected a jar of strawberry rhubarb preserve, the contents ruby red in the afternoon light. "This batch came from berries that weathered that terrible storm we had in May. Thought for sure they'd be ruined. But sometimes the fruit that struggles the most ends up with the most complex flavor." Vision accepted the jar with both hands, examining the color and texture with the same focus he'd given the honeycomb. Adversity creating depth rather than destruction. There's profound wisdom in that observation. Exactly right. Life's got a way of turning our worst storms into our best stories, if we're patient enough to let the sweetness develop. She winked at Wanda. "I imagine you two know something about that, building a life together in these uncertain times." They purchased 3 jars, each one selected by Vision based on what he called optimal flavor complexity ratios, but what Wanda recognized as his growing appreciation for the stories behind simple things. The woman wrapped each jar carefully in tissue paper, her movements economical and practiced. As they walked away, Vision carried the small bag with particular care. "She was quite remarkable," he said. The way she spoke about her preserves suggested deep understanding of transformation processes, yet her language was purely experiential rather than scientific. 2 completely different ways of comprehending the same phenomena. "That's what I love about these places," Wanda replied, pausing to let a toddler chase soap bubbles across their path. "Everyone has their own way of understanding the world, but somehow it all fits together into something bigger." They discovered the new herb vendor, tucked between the bread booth and a flower stall. their display arranged with artistic flair that immediately caught Vision's attention. Each plant was perfectly positioned to create gradients of color and texture, from the silvery sage to the deep green rosemary to the delicate purple blooms of lavender. "Good afternoon," the vendor greeted them, a young man whose dirt-stained fingernails spoke of genuine connection to his craft. "Looking for anything particular, or just browsing?" "We're hoping to expand our garden," Wanda said, drawn immediately to a cluster of lemon thyme that filled the air with citrusy fragrance, something that would complement what we already have growing. Vision moved methodically through the display, occasionally leaning close to examine leaf structures or soil conditions. "Your cultivation techniques are quite impressive," he told the vendor. "The root development in these specimens suggests optimal growing conditions." "Thanks, man. I use a combination of traditional methods and some newer sustainable techniques. Each plant gets exactly what it needs, when it needs it. Kind of like raising kids, you know. They'll tell you what they want if you pay attention." "Anthropomorphizing plant behavior as a cultivation strategy," Vision murmured, fascination clear in his voice. "Treating care as a form of communication rather than simple maintenance. It's a remarkably intuitive approach to complex biological systems." The vendor grinned. "You could put it that way. I just call it listening." They selected several herbs, Vision drawn to varieties with interesting structural properties, while Wanda chose based on fragrance and potential culinary applications. The young man wrapped their purchases in damp newspaper, explaining how to transition the plants gradually to their new environment. "Take your time with them," he advised as they prepared to leave. "Plants are like people. They need time to feel comfortable before they really start to thrive." Walking home through the late afternoon warmth, their canvas bags full of treasures from their market adventure, Wanda felt the deep contentment that came from simple pleasures shared with someone who noticed everything she missed and found wonder in details she took for granted. "I've been thinking about what the preserve vendor said," Vision mentioned as they turned onto their street, "about adversity creating complexity rather than destruction. It seems applicable to more than just fruit cultivation." "How do you mean?" "Well, consider our own circumstances. By any logical assessment, our relationship shouldn't exist. I'm a synthetic being designed for warfare. You're a woman whose powers could reshape reality itself. Yet somehow, the very impossibility of our connection has created something more profound than either of us could achieve independently." Wanda paused on their front walkway, struck by the truth in his observation. "You think we're like those storm-weathered berries, better because of what we've survived? Perhaps. Or perhaps we're simply learning that the most beautiful things often emerge from the most unlikely circumstances." He shifted their bags to one arm so he could open the front door for her. "Either way, I find myself grateful for every storm that led us here." Their house welcomed them back with the familiar comfort of afternoon light streaming through windows they'd washed together, floors they'd swept side by side, walls they'd painted in colors chosen through lengthy discussions about warmth and serenity. Home had become more than shelter. It was the physical manifestation of their shared dreams. While Vision arranged their market purchases in the kitchen with his characteristic precision, Wanda wandered through the rooms they'd made their own. The living room with its overstuffed sofa, positioned perfectly for morning coffee and evening conversations. The dining room, where they'd shared countless meals and deeper discussions. The study, where Vision spent hours reading while she worked on her own projects. each pursuing individual interests in comfortable companionship. Every space held memories now. The corner where they'd assembled a bookshelf together, Vision's methodical approach balancing her creative problem-solving. The windowsill where they'd placed their first shared plant, a peace lily that had thrived under their joint attention. The front porch where they'd spent countless evenings watching their neighborhood settle into dusk. Wanda, in Vision's voice, drew her back to the present. I thought we might plant our new herbs this evening, if you're agreeable. The temperature and humidity levels are optimal, and I confess I'm eager to see how they'll integrate with our existing garden. She found him in the kitchen, their purchases arranged in neat rows on the counter like ingredients for some domestic alchemy. That sounds perfect. We could have dinner on the patio afterward, watch the sunset from our new garden expansion. An excellent plan, though I should mention that I've been experimenting with a new pasta sauce recipe. Nothing elaborate, simply an application of flavor chemistry principles to traditional Italian techniques. You've been busy, she said, noting the small notebook where he'd been recording his culinary experiments. What's the theory behind this one? Well, I've been analyzing the molecular structure of umami compounds, particularly how they interact with acid and fat to create depth of flavor. The preserve vendor's comments about complexity through adversity gave me an idea about controlled stress in flavor development. Wanda laughed, the sound bright in their sun-filled kitchen. Only you could turn a conversation about jam into a lesson in molecular gastronomy. Is that terribly odd? He asked, genuine uncertainty in his voice. I find that everything seems connected when I examine it closely enough. Cooking and chemistry, gardening and philosophy, love and physics. Perhaps my processing systems simply seek patterns where none exist. No, it's not odd at all, she assured him, moving to stand close enough to touch his arm. It's one of the things I love most about you. The way you find connections between things that seem completely separate. You make the ordinary feel magical. You do the same for me, he replied softly. Before you, I understood efficiency and optimization. Now I understand beauty and wonder. You've taught me that the most important discoveries aren't always the most logical ones. They worked together to prepare their new herbs for planting, Vision consulting reference materials, while Wanda trusted instinct and experience. The afternoon light slanted golden through the kitchen windows as they gathered tools and prepared the soil amendments their new plants would need. I've been wondering, Vision said as he measured precise amounts of compost, about the concept of legacy, not in the traditional sense of inheritance or offspring, but in terms of the changes we create simply by existing in a space. What kind of changes do you mean? Consider our garden. When we arrived, this yard was essentially barren. Now it supports dozens of plant species, provides habitat for insects and birds, contributes oxygen and beauty to our immediate environment. We've altered the ecosystem simply by caring for it. Wanda nodded, understanding where his thoughts were leading. And you're wondering about the human equivalent. Precisely. Our neighbors, the people we encounter at the market, even strangers who simply observe us existing peacefully together. Are we creating ripples of change merely by demonstrating that love can transcend conventional boundaries? It was a profound question, one that touched on the deeper implications of their choice to build a life together. They weren't just two individuals in love. They were proof of possibility, evidence that connection could bridge any gap if approached with genuine openness. I think we are, she said finally. Maybe not in obvious ways, but in small shifts. The way people smile when they see us walking together, how that vendor talked to us like we'd been neighbors for years. Every normal interaction we have challenges someone's assumptions about what's possible. Then our legacy isn't just personal happiness, but contribution to a more accepting world. Exactly. We're not trying to change anyone's mind directly, but just by being ourselves, being happy, being normal, we're showing that love really can conquer fear. Vision's expression grew thoughtful as he considered this. It's remarkable to think that simple contentment could be a form of activism. The most powerful kind, maybe. When people see that different doesn't have to mean threatening, it opens up space for other kinds of acceptance. They carried their supplies to the backyard, where afternoon shadows were beginning to stretch across the lawn. Their existing garden had flourished beyond their initial hopes, creating a small oasis of color and fragrance that drew butterflies and hummingbirds throughout the growing season. Vision had designed the layout with mathematical precision, creating sight lines and plant groupings that maximized both aesthetic appeal and growing efficiency. Wanda had added the touches that made it feel alive rather than merely organized. The wind chimes that caught evening breezes, the small bird bath where robins gathered each morning, the comfortable bench where they often sat to admire their work. "Where do you think the new herbs should go?" she asked, surveying their options. "I believe here would be optimal," he said, indicating a spot that would receive morning sun but afternoon shade. The proximity to the kitchen window would make harvesting convenient, and the soil drainage appears excellent in this location. They knelt together in the soft earth, Vision's precise measurements complementing Wanda's intuitive spacing. The work was meditative, requiring attention, but not intense concentration, leaving room for comfortable conversation and shared appreciation of the late-day warmth. "This might be my favorite time," Wanda said, as she gently teased apart the root ball of a lemon thyme plant. "When we're working together on something that will outlast the afternoon." "I find great satisfaction in it as well," Vision agreed, his movements careful and deliberate as he prepared each planting hole to exact specifications. There's something profound about collaborating on growth, about nurturing potential into reality. A hummingbird visited the nearby bee balm while they worked, its wings a blur of motion as it moved from flower to flower. Vision paused to observe its efficiency, the way it seemed to know instinctively which blooms would offer the richest rewards. "Perfect optimization through evolution," he murmured appreciatively. "Millions of years of development have created a creature that can hover, fly backwards, and extract nectar with surgical precision. And it's beautiful while doing it," Wanda added, watching the bird's iridescent feathers catch the light. "Function and beauty in perfect harmony. Like the best of human achievements," Vision said. "Art that serves a purpose, architecture that inspires while sheltering, music that conveys meaning while pleasing the ear." They finished planting as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Each new herb settled carefully into soil that had been enriched with compost and positioned for optimal growth. Vision watered each plant with measured precision, while Wanda gathered their tools, both satisfied with the afternoon's work. "Now, for that experimental pasta sauce," she suggested, noting how the golden light made everything in their garden seem to glow with inner warmth. "Indeed. Though I should warn you that my calculations suggest the flavor profile will be quite intense. I may have been overly ambitious in my umami optimization." "I trust your chemistry," she said, linking her arm through his as they walked back toward the house. "Besides, if it's terrible, we'll order pizza and call it a learning experience." An admirably pragmatic approach to culinary experimentation. The kitchen felt especially welcoming as they returned to it, still warm from the afternoon sun and filled with the lingering aromas of their morning coffee and fresh herbs. Vision moved through his cooking preparations with the same methodical care he brought to everything, while Wanda set their small patio table for dinner. Through the open windows came the sounds of their neighborhood settling into evening. Children being called in for dinner, dogs barking friendly greetings to their owners, returning from work, the distant hum of lawnmowers as people tended their yards before darkness fell. It was the soundtrack of ordinary life, the kind of peaceful domesticity they'd both dreamed of without quite believing it could be theirs. Yet here they were, part of it all, contributing their own small notes to the symphony of suburban contentment. "Wanda," Vision called from the stove, where something was beginning to smell remarkably promising. "Would you mind testing this? I believe I've achieved the optimal balance, but I'd value your assessment." She joined him at the stove, where a rich red sauce simmered with complex aromas that made her mouth water. "It smells incredible, very sophisticated." He offered her a spoon for tasting, his expression anxious in the way that always emerged when he was trying something completely new. The sauce was indeed intense, layered with flavors that seemed to reveal themselves in stages, but balanced in a way that spoke of genuine understanding rather than mere technical precision. "Vision, this is amazing," she said honestly. "It's like you've captured the essence of every good Italian restaurant and somehow made it better." His relief was visible, shoulders relaxing as his confidence returned. "The molecular interactions proved more complex than anticipated, but I believe the result justifies the additional calculation time required." Translation: "You worried about it all afternoon, but it turned out perfectly." An accurate summation, yes. They prepared dinner together in the gentle rhythm they'd perfected over countless evenings, Vision's precise technique complementing Wanda's intuitive touches. The pasta water came to a rolling boil, just as the sauce reached perfect consistency, timing that spoke of practice and mutual understanding. Steam rose from the pot like incense, carrying the promise of another shared meal in their carefully crafted paradise. The molecular bonds in fresh pasta create entirely different texture profiles than dried varieties, Vision observed as he tested a strand for doneness. The gluten development, the way it holds sauce, even the rate at which it releases heat. Fascinating how such small differences compound into completely distinct experiences. Wanda smiled as she grated fresh Parmesan, watching the way his scientific mind found wonder in everyday processes. "You make everything sound like a miracle when you explain it that way." "Perhaps because it is miraculous," he replied, lifting the pasta with practiced efficiency. "The fact that flour and water and time can become something that brings such satisfaction, that tomatoes and herbs and careful attention can create flavors that didn't exist moments before. We're participating in daily alchemy." Outside, the first hints of sunset painted their patio in warm, amber light. The table she'd set earlier looked perfect in the golden glow, simple white plates and cloth napkins, creating an elegant backdrop for their homemade feast. Their newly planted herbs caught the light along the garden's edge, already seeming more settled into their new home. Vision carried the pasta while she brought the wine they'd been saving, a bottle from the local vineyard they'd discovered on one of their weekend explorations. The cork came free with a satisfying pop, releasing aromas that spoke of patient aging and careful cultivation. "To successful experiments," Wanda said, raising her glass as they settled into their chairs. "To the courage to attempt them." Vision replied, his glass meeting hers with a crystal clear note that seemed to harmonize with the evening air. The first bite confirmed what the tasting had promised. Vision's sauce was extraordinary, complex enough to keep revealing new flavors with each mouthful, yet balanced enough never to overwhelm. The pasta provided the perfect canvas, its texture holding the sauce while contributing its own subtle wheat notes to the symphony. I believe I understand now why humans find such satisfaction in cooking, Vision said thoughtfully. It's not merely about sustenance or even flavor. It's about transformation, taking simple elements and through care and attention, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Like what we've done here, Wanda said, gesturing to encompass not just their meal, but their entire domestic tableau. Two people who shouldn't exist, building something beautiful together. Indeed, though I prefer to think we've discovered we were always meant to exist, simply waiting for the right circumstances to reveal ourselves. A firefly blinked to life near the garden fence, its tiny light pulsing against the deepening blue of twilight. Then another appeared, and another, until their backyard began to twinkle with gentle illumination. Vision watched with the same fascination he brought to all natural phenomena, but there was something deeper in his expression tonight. Bioluminescence, he murmured, chemical reactions producing light without heat. They're essentially living lanterns, each one a small miracle of evolution. They always remind me of wishes, Wanda said, watching the fireflies dance through the air in patterns that seemed both random and purposeful, like tiny prayers floating up to the sky. What would you wish for? Vision asked, his voice soft in the gathering dusk. The question caught her off guard, not because it was difficult, but because it was so simple. More of this, she said without hesitation. More evenings like this one. More mornings waking up beside you. More ordinary days that feel extraordinary because we're sharing them. No grand adventures, no cosmic revelations or earth-shaking discoveries. I've had enough adventure to last several lifetimes, she said with gentle laughter. What we have here, this peace, this contentment, this feeling of being exactly where I belong, that's more precious than any adventure. Vision reached across the table to take her hand, his synthetic skin warm from the wine and the lingering heat of cooking. I find myself in complete agreement. Though I was designed for conflict and protection, what I truly desire is this: quiet evenings and shared meals, and the privilege of watching you discover new reasons to smile. The fireflies continued their ancient dance as darkness deepened around them. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed the hour, its bronze voice carrying across rooftops and gardens to mark another day's peaceful passage. Their neighbors' windows began to glow with lamplight as families gathered for their own evening rituals. Vision, Wanda said, watching how the candlelight they'd lit caught the planes of his face, making him look both ethereal and utterly real. Do you ever miss it? The purpose you were designed for, the clarity of having a mission. He considered this carefully, as he did all questions that touched on his unique existence. I sometimes wonder about the paths not taken, the capabilities I possess but choose not to exercise. But missing implies regret, and I feel none. My original purpose was protection, after all. What better way to protect than to demonstrate that peace is possible, even for people like us, especially for people like us? We represent the possibility that anyone can choose love over conflict, creation over destruction. That's a more powerful protection than any weapon I was designed to wield. A cool breeze stirred the herbs they'd planted earlier, carrying their fragrance across the patio. The lemon thyme released citrusy notes that mingled with the lavender and rosemary, creating an olfactory symphony that seemed to perfectly capture the essence of their shared contentment. "I want to remember this exact moment," Wanda said, closing her eyes to better absorb the sensory details. "The way the air feels, the sound of your voice, the taste of this incredible sauce you created. Sometimes I worry that happiness this complete can't last, that I should memorize it while I can." As the evening deepened around them and the last fireflies faded into darkness, Vision squeezed her hand gently, his voice carrying the warmth of absolute certainty. "Then we shall create so many moments like this that forgetting becomes impossible. Each morning will bring new reasons to smile. Each sunset, new opportunities for gratitude." He lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "And when sleep finally calls to us tonight, we'll carry this contentment into our dreams, knowing that tomorrow holds the promise of another day to build our beautiful, impossible life together." The stars emerged one by one above their garden sanctuary, bearing silent witness to a love that transformed the extraordinary into the perfectly, peacefully ordinary.